Welcome everybody. I see everybody beginning to log in. We will start the webinar in about 1 minute. Again, I see a lot of people beginning to log in. We'll start here in about 30 seconds. Give a little bit of time for people to finish logging in. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. We want to thank everybody for joining us this morning for the Economic Alliance's live industrial procurement forum, featuring a good keynote speaker and an EPC project and procurement forecast panel. I'm Economic Alliance President Chad Burke. Both Vincent DiCosimo, our keynote speaker, and our panelists will be answering questions at the conclusion of their comments today. So do be sure to submit your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Before we hear from Vince, we'd like to thank our sponsor and our committee who has helped to make today's event possible. To do so, I want to introduce Greg Miller. Greg is a very active member of our organization and our Business Growth Committee chairman. Greg, if you will accept your screen and pop up there for us, I will turn the introductions over to you. I see you, Greg. Welcome. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I'll turn it over to you real quick.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As Chad said, I am the Business Growth Committee chairman. Our committee works diligently to continue to provide opportunities for business and networking information transfer. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, ABGI. ABGI U.S.A. is a global tax credit and incentives firm that has more than 35 years of experience. As part of the ABGI group, it is the world's leading R&D tax incentives advisor and serves more than 2,300 clients around the world through its multidisciplinary team of more than 200 professionals. ABGI combines years of experience and diverse tax, legal, accounting, scientific, and engineering backgrounds to maximize all tax credits, deductions, and other specialized benefits available. A very special thank you goes out to ABGI for its continued support. And finally, if you or your business enjoys staying up to date on industry events in the Houston Port region, be sure to visit the Economic Alliance website at allianceportregion.com and subscribe to our podcast, The Gulf Coast Growth Show. Today's program will proceed as follows. First, we'll hear from our keynote speaker, Vincent DiCosimo. He will be followed by a procurement panel discussion, which will be moderated by BIC President Thomas Brinsko. Don't forget to submit any questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, I would like to introduce you to today's keynote speaker, Vincent DiCosimo. As the Senior Vice President of Targa, Vince is uniquely qualified to give us insight on two very important topics: the Houston Ship Channel Widening project and an update on general midstream activity. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our distinguished speaker. Mr. DiCosimo previously served as founder and CEO of Coast Energy LLC from 2009 to 2010. He was co-founder and CEO of Pipestem Energy Group from 2007 to 2009, Vice President in Marketing for Enterprise Products Partners from 2004 to 2007, founder and CEO of Red Meter LLC from 2000 to 2004, and founder, CEO, and EVP of Cornerstone Propane and Coast Energy Group LP from 1990 to 2000. Mr. DiCosimo graduated with honors from West Texas A&M University and attended the University of Houston for postgraduate studies. Mr. DiCosimo currently serves as Executive Director of CFOP, which stands for the Coalition for a Fair and Open Port, Director of ILTA, Second Vice Chairman of the Greater Houston Port Bureau, and is a past Chairman of the Sugarland TIRZ #1. So now it is time for us to learn what is happening in the ship channel and the midstream sector. Take it away, Vince.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Greg. And Chad, thank you very much. I want to thank the Economic Alliance. I want to thank BIC Alliance and, of course, the sponsor today, ABGI, as well, for sponsoring this and putting this together. There's no doubt we're in interesting times. I hope everyone is COVID safe right now and beginning to enjoy summer as much as you possibly can. It'd be a great thing. I'm sure that we'd all love to have a little time to at least relax a little bit over the summer months. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and a little bit of all the good stuff that we have to talk about right now today in terms of where we are in the world and where the markets are today and kind of what we're seeing in terms of how we're going to go forward. So hopefully everybody can see that. I have to go through kind of a forward-looking statement because Targa is a public entity, but basically whatever I say today basically is what I say today. So not necessarily separate me from the company, and so if you have questions at the end, they reflect more of my opinion. Today, I want to give you an overview of kind of the midstream industry, and I'll give you a little bit about what my company does, Targa. Also, what does the overall industry look like? And I'll try to do that from a global perspective and drill down to a more micro perspective in terms of rebounding in this COVID commodity environment. And then, most importantly, what I like to call a generational project, which is Project 11 of the Houston Ship Channel in Port Houston. And a defining moment that will certainly be important for not just Houston, but the region, the state of Texas, and quite frankly, I'm a firm believer in the United States, in the importance to the United States. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Today, one of the things that Targa's really focused on as a company is we're continuing to focus on how we're connected in our community, not just with employees in our community, but as our employees outreach in the community. We focus on safety. That's the number one item every morning when we begin discussions on any of our calls. We're involved in how we improve the environment where we do a project, sort of the old Boy Scout rule, leave the property better than you found it. And so we try to do that. We focus greatly with training on operational excellence. And we never forget that we have a strong alignment with not only the community, not only our employees, but also obviously our shareholders. So we are extremely involved in almost all of the communities, and I believe all the communities that we currently operate in. So what is a midstream company? Because it continues to redefine itself, frankly. And this is a really busy slide that I'll try to walk you through. The far left, really up in the left-hand corner, begins the description. It's where oil and gas basically is drilled, E&P companies. We are not an E&P company, and midstream companies typically are not an E&P company. However, they could be embedded as a part of an E&P company. The midstream takes the gas, takes the oil, moves it to a gas processing plant typically, or some other type of processing plant. We take the gas that's left from processing it, the upper two boxes, we move it downstream to our facilities. We have large fractionator facilities that some of the my colleagues today on the call, on the webinar, have participated in helping us build. It's been a wonderful group of projects that we've been able to put together in Mount Bellevue. Then we also take the what we call Y-grade stream, that next line, which is the natural gas liquids, and we send it over and it gets processed. And then what happens there is it goes to an export market, and we'll talk more about that in detail. So really it's processing, we have pipeline transportation, and then we have downstream marketing. And so midstream companies typically fundamentally look like that. And you'll see on the map on the right a group of what Targa assets look like. We are involved across the United States, in North Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and we have marketing on our propane marketing group across the United States. So that typically defines a midstream company. If you think of us as somewhat of the straw between where E&P is found and where the markets are. And those markets can be global markets, which they are in our case. So let's talk about how the market has responded and what's happening in terms of COVID-19 and the impact on energy. Everyone knows about now the infamous day back in April when the May contract for crude oil rolled off the board, and we saw crude basically go to something we had never seen, which is a negative pricing model. I'm not going to go through all the charts. I think they're all down and to the right, and it's pretty obvious what has been the impact from COVID-19. The big numbers that I'll just recite for you, which you may be very familiar with, is that typically on a global basis, we use about 100 million barrels of crude oil a day that get refined, that get defined into some other products as well. And throughout the globe, those products are absorbed. Some of them are stored, and they may be anything from motor gasoline to av fuel, lube oils, etc. So when we all went home around the world and began to shelter in place, that demand obviously was cut significantly, and you can see that when we look at demand in the bottom charts and what's been going on. We initially just immediately began to shut off all demand in every sector. Rig count plummeted because you don't have to find something, drill for it, and move it to market if it's not needed. And therefore, it depressed the pricing on all the products. Now, we're beginning to see it come back. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, using New York as a little bit of a model for the rest of the world, we're beginning to see some stabilization, and we're beginning to see a rise in terms of total demand, in terms of driving. This week's numbers from the EIA and IEA both looked pretty promising on where we're at in terms of driving demand. Clearly, we're still in a very slow acceleration, pun intended, on the av fuels in terms of where we're going to see aviation fuels come back. But driving demand, if you're like me, I'm tired of being kind of cooped up. We're still, if you might guess, I'm still working out of our house for Targa. We have not returned to our offices yet. So driving demand and over-the-road highway demand, meaning diesel for the trucking industry, have increased significantly. If you just look at the change in monthly demand, you'll see that really beginning of the year, we came off of an extremely robust 2019, which was an incredible year, not only for the U.S. economy, but across the world. Many countries were finally coming out of more depressed markets, if you will, and we're seeing rebounds. We were seeing economic growth. We were seeing manufacturing growth. So we entered the year, January, just slightly below where we had left 2019. And as you see, by the time we hit April, our monthly oil demand on a global basis had basically shed almost 30 million barrels, a little over 27 million barrels a day. That's obviously significant. That's what caused the May contract to go off the board negative. By May, we see a rebound. June, we're already seeing a significant rebound. We're now seeing demand around 85 million barrels. The forecast, as you will see on the far right-hand corner where you see December, is to end up the year right now, based on these are IEA numbers, almost flat, maybe off about 2.5 to 3 million barrels. And that would be a significant rebound. So what does that mean to all of us on the call and all of my colleagues here in terms of procurement and in terms of what we're going to see in terms of projects? Because I want to speak to that a little bit as well. I think it means that we're probably going to see some pretty good growth in the latter quarter of our fourth quarter of the year, the latter part of the year. And as we head into 2021 again, we'll see some of those projects that maybe have been shuttered, that have for the time being deferred, probably back into at least into project planning mode in 2021. If you look at if you look at our growth that's projected by any measure, and this was where we were prior to COVID-19. So I'm going to go back and say if we end the year about 2.5 million barrels below last year, and so pretty close, we're pretty flat to last year, let's say, and we end the year there, then I'm going to use the same forecasting numbers that we had from last year, or just from really March heading into the second quarter of this year. So crude exports, I think, will rebound. So if you look at the first square on the left here, top left, you know, we had a tremendous amount of crude exports. In fact, we were still at 3.7 million from a high of 4.7 million barrels a day. We were 3.7 million barrels a day from the U.S. still in March. I think we'll see container imports and exports continue to see this graph on the right continue to grow, because demand for new products will, as we get, particularly as we come out of shelter in place, replacement products, things we haven't bought for 2, 3, 4 months, we'll see, I think, the demand for that. Most of those products obviously arrive via containers and move across the U.S. in trucks and trains. Our resin exports, which are key and important to Houston, we have a number of manufacturers here on the Houston ship channel. Those go into those products that we buy that are in these containers. And so we'll continue to see those resin exports. They have rebounded somewhat as China has come back online. And propane exports, quite frankly, have been kind of holding fairly steady. They've been a stalwart. If you look at public numbers of companies that have the ability to export propane right now, you'll see that they look pretty good. And the weekly EIA numbers also reflect that propane exports have been holding fairly strong. So that defines kind of what I want to really spend some time on today, and that's continuing to be an advocate along with all the folks that are here in the Economic Alliance in terms of how critical it is that we support the port in terms of channel improvements and how critical they are. And this is a port graph, and I appreciate being able to use it, but it says it all, right? It says, look at the 3 lines moving from the left to the right, our population, cargo, containers, and if we put energy products on there, they would follow that same slope, perhaps even more steeply to the right. And then the purple line here is obviously the depth of the channel from where we started in 1920 to where we are today, and trying to get to across all of the channel to 45 feet, because some of the channel is still below 45 feet at 42 feet or below. So it's significant that we support these channel improvements. So let's look at kind of all infrastructure, because I like to pull back the lens a little bit here. So not only do we need to think of infrastructure in terms of the channel, so I'm going to get back to that in a second, but let's think of infrastructure in terms of just multi-county and regionally. You know, Texas is amazing, because when we bring products in off the channel or ship products to the channel, a lot of them come via pipeline for my part of the industry, but a lot of them also come via trucks as well, and then are distributed out of the channel by trucks. So if you look at it, there's 65, almost 66,000 trucking companies in Texas. It's amazing. Employing over 700,000 jobs. 82% of our communities depend exclusively on trucks to move goods in and out, with seaports and land ports and those from the airports. So if you think about that, that's pretty important in terms of how we have trucks moving and how our public roads are getting to and from our ports. So we have 282 billion driven annual miles by all the motorists in the state of Texas, and 32 billion of those are driven by trucks. So I start there because I want that to be a significant point and reminder as we look at infrastructure. The port widening and deepening is an extremely important part of it, and we need the support of everybody. And we need to also support other industries that need infrastructure. So when we're talking to our legislatures, congressmen, senators, let's be sure we're also talking about transportation and infrastructure and the importance of how it all ties together. So you hear all the noise out there about where we're going forward, and crude oil headlines, and how all this is going to finally come together. And this is a whole page of just one page from Hart Energy of what's happening in terms of crude oil and cargo moving and Russian output and OPEC, and just there's all kinds of noise going on. So where do we go from here? Well, in terms of blending this together, I believe that we're still going to see global energy dominance over OPEC from the U.S. And we're still going to see that, because if you look at the top right-hand corner, the U.S. crude exports to every one of these European countries, A lot of people don't think about Europe being a big buyer of our crude oil, but they are. Many people tend to think that probably most of it goes to Asia, China, and it does. But these countries are significant buyers of crude oil. And if you look at the bottom corner, you can also see this globally. Where does our crude oil go as it exits the U.S.? So as demand rises, not only in Europe, but continues obviously to rise in Pakistan, India, China, and across the globe, that demand is going to require more production. And the production that we produce here in North America and Canada included, in that North America, I'm not excluding Canada here, those are crude oils that basically lend themselves or blend themselves either way to being crude oils that are defining for the refining industry what around the world like Reliance would like in India. It's the kind of sweet crude that they desire. So again, if I look going forward now in terms of energy demand, so we know that we're set up for growth. We know that we're set up for this infrastructure growth, and we need infrastructure. So what does the global energy demand look like going out 20 years from now? And if you look at it, I'm not going to go through them all, but each chart is simply hard and up to the right. So that forecast is still in place, even in a COVID world. Does it push it out a few weeks or months, or maybe even define it by a year or more? Possibly. But we're still going to have this look on every one of these charts from an end-use sector growth, regionally growth, by product, whether it's renewables, hydro, oil, gas. We're going to continue to see growth in every one of these energy products in all of the end-user sectors for the next 20 years. And so bringing it home, why is the Houston Ship Channel so important to that global growth? Well, let me again go back through sort of where we're at in the United States. Prior to this, we were manufacturing and producing about 13 million, a little over 13 million barrels a day. Phenomenal number. The United States, again, is a major player in the world. Our exports on all products, thinking all products, manufactured products, and even when we think about other finished products that we have, as well as obviously other types of commodities that are agricultural commodities that also ship from ports out of the United States, but also the Houston Ship Channel. It's an important, I call it the carotid artery of America. So Houston currently receives about 15 million barrels a day of supply. We have 570 million barrels of storage here. Corpus Christi has about 5 million barrels a day of supply. It's a little bit less right now. They've grown their storage to about 36 million barrels of storage. There's a huge complex on the right-hand side. You see what is representative of Targa. Again, many other of our peer group midstream companies have similar infrastructure crisscrossing across the Gulf Coast, and then also landing into the ship channel in Houston. The top 5 metropolitan area exporters, if you look at it, we're number one. And I think I said this in kind of the preliminary interview. It's always astonishing when I throw this up on the chart and I talk about this, how we are number one in terms of exporters in the United States. If I look at my LPG exports, which is the commodity that we deal most in, propane and butane being the two, we look at that as a huge plus for the world. It also helps in terms of cleaner air, national security for the U.S. By moving the first molecules out, if you will, from the energy producing basins, the molecules that are embedded in the natural gas. Those molecules are ethane, propane, butane, and other LPGs. When we move those out first, it helps to lower flaring in the U.S. It helps to continue shale production, less reliance on foreign oils. The UN actually developed some sustainable development goals a few years ago, and we adhere very closely to those in terms of where we like to see our volumes go around the globe. And if you think about this, every time that we transport, store, and put an LPG into a replacement, if you will, for other products such as wood, coal, high sulfur coal like is burned in China, and in some cases, what I'll call organic fuels, we lower the greenhouse gas footprint by 50% by moving propane into those markets. So exporting propane to the rest of the globe out of the lower U.S. here and in the Houston Ship Channel is very important. To note, the Houston Ship Channel is the largest exporter by far in the United States. There are some exports on the East Coast, but really it's the largest export of propane and butane to the globe, and it is the sole largest storage place in the world for LPGs. And again, so expanding the Houston Ship Channel to get these products to the global market help in a number of ways. If we want to look at just overall growth, it's just continuing. And so if you look at the ship channel, about 83% of all the Port Houston traffic is related to some way, shape, or form, the energy world, the energy complex, if you will. So it requires us all working together very closely. We want to have the core, obviously, who's been just terrific in working with on this project. We need industry, which is somewhat my plea today, along with the community and the community outreach. We need everyone in our community. And obviously the port, who is the sponsor for this project, who's done a terrific job in its leadership and leading advocacy. But there's nothing better than the outcry of all of us right now to make sure that the message is being heard. So what's the project look like? As we drive regional prosperity, we have one mission, and that is to continue our two-way traffic on the Houston Ship Channel, which is unique to it, and continue our expedited LPP process. So we've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. Most of you know that they're in charge of all the projects that are out there. The Corps does a tremendous job in terms of its staff and working with us, but they get backlogged. As far back as 2014, they had $96 billion of construction and backlogs. The process that we go through takes a long time. So if you look at the years-long process, when you're not using an LPP, this locally preferred plan or local preferred plan, you have to go through a number of steps. And this process is, I mean, it is tiresome, very tiresome, as the folks who do it every day and have done it before tell you, and it takes years. How long does it take? Well, let me just show you. Here were some projects that were already approved and had already gone through WRDA and are still taking 20 years to complete. So if you look, these are just a number of core projects in the United States that were originally scheduled, okay? So if you look at the red, that's where these projects are today. The blue is where the projects were originally, or maybe they weren't even originally scheduled for, but had been moved to. That's the last date. So if you look at Kentucky locks, that's 2023, now it's 2041. Replacement locks on Tennessee, 2051. And I'm not going to go through it, but you can see some of these projects are out as far as 2090 now. So it's important for us when we talk about supporting this project to make sure we understand how important it is to get behind it. If we look at 2018, projects that made their way through the WRDA process, there were none in 14, 30. In 2018, we had 10 that met the feasibility study, 15 that actually got construction projects. So that was a great year because some of those were holdovers from 16 and 14. So where do we go in 20? That's what we want to talk about. In more detail here a little bit, just to bring the eye straight down on the Houston Ship Channel. You know, there's 200 plus independent businesses, ports, and terminals up and down the ship channel, 200,000 barge movements a year. It involves a number of different commodities across the board. We have a terrific footprint. If you look at how far up the ship channel comes, how large our complexes are, it's a manufacturing complex. The website now that's been set up for the Houston Ship Channel, which, by the way, if you'll go to their website, this is a terrific map. You can spot any of these, and when you click on them, it will show you who that is and where they're at. But you can see that a majority of the businesses and terminals are pretty far up the ship channel and into Houston. So what does it all mean for us here? It means about 3.2 million jobs throughout the United States are supported by the ship channel, $802 billion It means that just in Texas, it's 1.35 million jobs and $339 billion. So our priority right now is, number one, we got to get it wider and deeper. We got to maintain two-way traffic. Wider and deeper is safer. It's the number one reason, if you want to just tell your congressmen, your legislators, whoever you're talking to, businessmen, why we want to get this done, it's safer. So there's a number of improvements. And again, you can go to the port's website, you can look at that and click on each one of these layers and see how it's going to be done, where it starts from Bolivar Roads Peninsula out here all the way up to Redfish and finally ending at the 610 bridge and the turning basin. So I encourage you to take a look at their website. It's terrific in terms of the ability to click and click through and look at it in the interfaces. Are we all concerned about the environment? Yes. Make no mistake. All of us, and I'm sure all of you on this webinar and all of my colleagues, we're concerned. And the port has done a tremendous job of looking at how we can, again, like the Boy Scout, leave it better than we're finding it. And so there are several projects that will be done along with widening the ship channel and deepening it. And again, I encourage you to go and look at all the environmental initiatives that are going to take place, from building a bird island construction, the creation of new oyster reefs. There are a number of these environmental projects that will enhance the ship channel and leave it better than it is today. So we need to work together. We need your support today and across the industry, across all segments of the industry. Whether you have a waterborne vessel, or whether you have a highway vessel, a truck, a rail car, or you're moving products in or out, or you're one of the manufacturing facilities or a warehousing facility, we need the community to come together. We need the outreach in our local communities to let them know that this is important, and it's a regional thing. I spent many years in Sugar Land, and I can tell you, there are folks who know that we have a ship channel, but the depth of understanding from some of the outer regions on how valuable the ship channel is, we need to enlighten and expand on their understanding. It's very important to all of us to work together. So financing, feasibility, advocacy. The feasibility is done. Now the chief has signed off. The chief of the engineers for the Army Corps of Engineers has signed off. He's moved the report on. It now goes to WARDA. So we're in the advocacy phase, which right now means all of us need to shout loudly. And again, write letters, do what you can, join with the Economic Alliance, join with Greater Houston Port Bureau, Greater Houston Partners, and anybody else that you can, as well as the port, in terms of making sure that we hear it. Financing, this is a big project. This is a big project. We want to accelerate this project and not end out here in 2035 or 2045. It's a generational change for us to do this and to keep the growth happening in this region. It's very important for all those lines on the graph to continue up and to the right. And to do that, we need to accelerate that, and we need to accelerate it in a mode that is called the local preferred plan. It's $1 billion. It's the most efficient investment this nation can make. We've talked about it being a public-private partnership. We're trying to work through those details. I encourage you, if we have this phase 4 or 3.5 or 5 phase that comes out and it's another $3 trillion, we need to ask for part of that $3 trillion that we hope, if it does come out, that it includes a major piece of transportation and infrastructure. And I encourage you to make sure that that is part of the potential for this next $3 trillion that's out there. I will tell you, when you look at it, it's not right now. The bill that was sent out does not include a lot of transportation infrastructure. Well, for $3 trillion, there can't be a more important waterway in the United States. And I'm trying to be as non-political about this, but it is very important for us that in a nonpartisan way, we make sure everybody gets the message that this is the single most important waterway in the United States. So it's $1 billion project. What can you do? Again, contact local, state, federal officials, and let's make sure everyone knows that this project is a call to action. Thank you very much. Must have been good timing. I see Todd I see Chad pop back on, and again, appreciate it and happy to take questions.
Absolutely, Vincent. Great job. Some really good information, and you finished exactly on time. So excellent timing there. We do have a few questions. And so great overview of midstream oil and gas and really kind of what has been happening there with the demand degradation and overproduction of where we are. So a couple of, let's start with China, because I've got a couple of good questions here about China. First, so China, the first question is, China demand for oil appears that it did not drop percentage-wise like Europe and U.S., okay? And if you saw that, why do you think that is, Chinese demand?
Well, what China did is as prices fell, there's a number of satellite data because obviously we don't get real-time storage data from China like we do from the U.S. with the EIA and on a more global basis from IEA. So I won't get into exactly how they measure what's in tanks over there, but what we saw as China went into a shutdown, the refineries did shut down because the air cleaned up. You could see it from just simply looking at air quality. But what we also saw were a number of vessels that continued to move to China and fill storages. So while it's a little bit of a false pretense when we say their demand didn't decline, the demand going to production declined. The demand going to storage they had enough storage to adequately continue to buy cheap crude as the crude dropped in half and then went obviously negative. So they filled storage with it.
Exactly. So that makes sense. So follow up to that, kind of on a grander scale, how do you see future relations with China affecting, our oil and gas market? I know you touched a little bit on that in your presentation, but
I wear the flag because I'm very proud of the country in which I live. I'm not a politician. How do I see relations? I would hope that on a business to business basis, we continue to see business to business make sense, and that we're not impacted as we have been with steel tariffs and other tariffs. Trying to stay again as non-political as I can. I just would hope that that we continue to see China as a location that we can continue to be a business partner with. I'll leave it at that.
Good. Very good. Very good. Another question, kind of on the oil and gas markets, and then I think we've got a few about the widening as well. But so we saw the storage problems that happened in April and May with crude oil as it comes down to the coast areas, and we heard stories of they're storing oil in all of our available tank storage. They're putting it in rail cars. They're potentially putting it in tankers. What does that, and whether that all manifested or not, or some of it was a little bit overblown, but what does that storage capacity for us here in Houston and the Gulf Coast look like right now? As I think you mentioned, demand is back up to about 85 million barrels per day right now.
Yeah, again, this week's numbers came out, and we saw some pretty decent storage numbers across the board. We're not exploiting on any product storage. We're seeing draws on some of the commodities, and demand is increasing. So the idea that we were going to top out, if you will, on storage, I personally, in fact, I went on record with this through another media at the end of April. I had a very difficult time. I could certainly do the math and kind of get where it was, but I also understand logistics and kind of global demand and how people will look to do exactly what China did, which was to buy cheap oil and store it. So I think we're in a good position storage-wise. Again, demand is increasing across all the commodities. Refinery capacity is coming up nicely. It will be slow to come up, slower, because one of the things that we have to look at that is in storage right now is that as we went into the shutdown, there is an RVP switch on motor gasoline. We have winter, summer gasoline. And as we went into the shutdown, there was a tremendous amount of winter gasoline still in storage tanks that didn't go anywhere, didn't go in any of the pipeline systems. It is now moving in the pipeline systems rapidly, and there was a waiver for being able to use winter gasoline through the summer months. So the refineries didn't have to come back up as quickly to make motor gasoline for the summer peak driving season. So they're slowly coming up, but not as quickly as one might think.
Very good, very good. Here's a pipeline question that several people have given the thumbs up to try and move it up. So some market research suggests that most of the pipeline work might have already been kind of completed, 2017 through 2020. Will we see a decline in the demand in building pipelines? And of course, your audience, you've got a lot of contracting firms and industrial construction companies. So will we see a decline in that demand for putting new pipelines in from West Texas to the Gulf Coast over the next, say, 2 years?
It's a great question. Great question. And a lot of the projects were done. That is correct, because from 2015, as we came out of the 2014 kind of slump, and 2015 into 2016, a number of projects got off the board and got into reality and took a couple of years to build and were completed somewhere in, say, 2Q, 3Q of 2019. There are still projects currently building right now, and they will be built out probably by the end of 20, maybe probably 21. Other pipeline projects will be dictated by the amount of supply that comes online, and then the demand as well pull on the Gulf Coast side. So one of the reasons, again, it's very important to continue to increase our capacity for takeaway is when we can no longer take away and we're stuffed, so to speak, at the ship channel point, nobody's going to build a pipeline to get there if it can't get out. So as global energy demand increases, we will see pulls on additional volumes coming from Houston and the Houston area in Texas, and we'll need a pipeline, but I can't tell you if it's a 21 or 22, but there will be projects for additional pipes as we go forward. There's no doubt. I think to Houston, let me say, if we're talking to Corpus, I think that they probably are in a period here where they have capacity. They're good.
Very good, very good. Going back to kind of our oil and gas production question here is, can Shell survive with the pricing as it stands now? Reports show that obviously the Russians and OPEC are targeting it by trying to keep prices low. You're not a explicit upstream guy, but I'll give you a shot at that question.
I'm not an E&P guy. I've never spent any of my years in E&P, but certainly follow it. My belief is that technology drives all this. Technology is so important, and I've always believed that in any of the companies that I've been with, and how important we employ technology. And I believe that some of the greatest scientists in the world work for energy companies. And so I believe that going forward, Shell will survive because our technology will continue to do just what it's already done in the last decade. It'll get better and better and better and drive the cost down to where we can produce these barrels. And if you read some of the public records today, you have some producers saying they can produce a $20 break even already. So yes, I believe Shell will be a very, very important. We have the largest reservoirs in the world now that we've located here in the domestic North America complex. So yes, absolutely.
Very good. And we've got time for one more question. We're going to end right on time here with the Q&A. And I think this is a fair question to ask, and you kind of being in the middle of this process, probably the best person to answer this. So the Port Authority and private industry, kind of our oil and gas industry that you help lead, has previously agreed to kind of split that cost of Project 11 to expedite it, to really take to DC the message that, hey, we've got the money for this, let us do that. Given the current economic conditions, what does that process look like now as far as Houston, the port, and our industry being able to help fund that project and bring that project to Congress with a good wallet full of money and saying, hey, let's do this now? Yeah,
good question, and I appreciate the author of that question. it's not an easy answer right now because we are in the middle of sort of a pandemic in terms of also the economic side of the pandemic. Also to note, when you present to Congress, you present a plan, so you don't necessarily have to have the cash in the bank. It's not as if we're going to write a check day one. You have to have a plan on how things get funded over the lifespan over the 4 to 5 years. So I will tell you, it's much more difficult, much more difficult. Not passing that off at all. I still hope and working with groups and talking to people about how we can do this successfully. I know the port would like to have that happen as soon as things open back up and we can start again going back to DC and spending more time in person. We're doing it right now on phone calls. We continue to reach out to all the people on the Transportation Infrastructure Group. My colleagues are, and letting them know kind of where we're in this period of uncertainty, and letting them know that we're still wanting to do something as a part of the industry behind it. We don't know how that's going to come together. The clarity is not there.
Well, and it's very unique times and kind of hard to predict a pandemic. We always, in this part of the country, look to kind of prepare for hurricanes. I don't know that anybody in our part of the world or industry has done a lot of preparation for pandemic as we entered into 2020. So obviously, very, very unique times and creating some situations globally that we've just unprecedented, right? So, but we greatly appreciate the work that our oil and gas industry has done, that the Port of Houston has done, that our Port Bureau and our pilots and all of the folks here at the Economic Alliance. I know we've got a great coalition working on this project, which in essence will make sure that the Port of Houston maintains its competitive advantage globally, and that's what this project does. We have to do this. It puts us in a position where we can continue to be the port of choice for moving this energy in and out of the U.S. And so appreciate your work, Vincent. Really appreciate the presentation. We have had some questions about availability of that presentation. The entire podcast or webinar will be sent out to everybody to rewatch it, and so everybody will get a chance to see that presentation again if they want to. So Vincent, just want to say thank you very much. We appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. So thank you very much, Vincent.
Thank you, and thank everybody else that's on the webinar for having an interest.
Outstanding. So now I would like to introduce you to the moderator for today's panel discussion, Thomas Brinsko. Thomas is a very good friend of ours. He's a former contract attorney for Exxon and Key Petroleum. Thomas joined the BIC Alliance in 1999 and became president in 2002. Thomas serves on the board of directors for both the ACIT, the Association of Chemical Industries of Texas, and the Economic Alliance. Thomas has 2 grown daughters and a son, Michael, who is a pretty good little basketball player and heading into his senior year this fall. They are both avid Rocket fans. Thomas is a season ticket holder, frequent dancer in the stands, if you've seen some of the Rockets memes. He also leads a fantastic organization, a nonprofit group called the Get Together that supports multiple other nonprofits. So just fantastic guy and good friend, great leader for this region and this industry. Welcome, Thomas. And now I'll turn it over to you to introduce your panel this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. Appreciate the introduction. And before I get to my panel, big shout out to Vincent and the great presentation that he made. Really appreciate you sharing all that data with our team. As Chad mentioned, my name is Thomas Brinsko. I'm super excited about the incredible panel of experts that we've assembled to discuss the EPC project and procurement forecast. Our panel discussion will run about 40 minutes, and then we'll move on to a moderated Q&A session, maybe last about 15 minutes there. So as many of you did for Vincent's presentation, feel free to type questions into the Q&A. If you see a little chat thing down there, don't use the chat, use the Q&A, because you'll just be directed to go there later on, and I'm going to have Chad kind of moderate some of those questions that we'll take a look at. So let's begin. I'd like to begin by introducing our panelists today. First, we have with McCarthy, Adeel Malik, who's their chief estimator. He's been with McCarthy for 6 years, has 22 years of experience in heavy civil construction, a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. In his current role as chief estimator, he manages all of McCarthy's marine and industrial estimating department. He coordinates with all the project directors and estimating team during the entire process from pre-construction all the way through. Also at McCarthy, he serves on their National Estimating Committee, which is responsible for forecasting material and manpower availability for future current and future projects. The deal is a whitewater rafter. We were talking about some of the big projects that he's been on from a rafting standpoint, and loving the outdoors. He does mountain biking, and he's currently rigging up a four-wheeler to do some off-road cycling himself, work himself there. Next on my panel, my friend Brandon Mabile with Performance Contractors. He is the Texas Region Business Development Manager for Performance. Performance does capital projects, of course, but also turnarounds and maintenance work. Brandon is a super connected guy. He's recent past chairman of the board of the local ABC chapter here in Houston. He works with the Construction and Maintenance Education Foundation, and past chairman of that. He's chairman of the Free Enterprise Alliance, works with NCCER, Houston Business Roundtable, Greater Houston Partnership, you name it. He is a servant leader to our industry, and we appreciate everything he's done. Real recently, he was recognized, as a matter of fact, by ABC as their National Young Professional of the Year. So congratulations to you there, Brandon. His free time is filled up by having 3 girls. God bless you there. And does a lot of camping and outdoor work with them there. I've got 2 panelists from the Port of Houston. First, I'm going to introduce Dean Ainuddin, who's the manager of contracts over there. He's been with Port of Houston Authority for 5 years. Prior to that, he's worked in purchasing for a number of governmental groups, including the Houston Metropolitan Transit Authority and the Houston County Department of Education. Dean loves going out into the country with his wife, Ann. They have 3 dogs, 4 cats, and interesting enough, 2 donkeys. In his free time, he says he does nothing but honeydews and home projects. Been there, done that. Thanks for joining us, Dean.
Thank you.
Also, Alberto Foster works on Dean's team. He's a procurement analyst for the Port of Houston Authority, been there 5 years. His department's role is to create value through strategic sourcing, efficient processes, promotion of ethical, transparent, and sustainable procurement principles. Prior to this, he was a procurement specialist who worked for many oil and gas companies, so he's got experience there. 15 years in supply chain work, an avid skier, scuba diver, and motorcyclist, and currently pursuing his private pilot's license. Be careful. Next on our panel, I have Mr. Jeff Allen, who is a vice president and regional practice manager for Burns and McDonnell. The Houston region doesn't sound big, but it is. It includes all of Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Jeff has 22 years of experience with EPC projects, primarily focused in the electrical power and the industrial business segments. His oversight at Burns and Mac includes the management of all the people, procurement, materials management, estimating, project controls, construction management, you name it, he's there. Projects ranging from less than $500,000 to $1 billion. He has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, also an MBA, and he's a registered professional engineer. Jeff has two sons, 16 and 12 years old, and spends a lot of his time as a swimming dad. I did that for one summer, and that was enough for me. And last, certainly not least on our panel, I've got Diego Carli, the VP of Commercial for Clough. Clough's a relatively new company in the United States, but they've been around nationally for a while. Diego has a master's in mechanical engineering. He's an accredited project director. He's got 15 years of management, M&A work and project management in the energy and mining industries. He comes to us after receiving his master's in Italy and France, began his career with Technip Italy, working on big EPC projects, moved to Melbourne with Worley Parsons, and then in 2014 joined Clough in the Perth head office and relocated to the U.S. To North America. Started in North America and Canada in 2017. Started up the U.S. office in 2018 through acquiring another EPC business. And in the short stint, big kudos to him, landed a $600 million job in North America. And I'll let him tell you more about that later on. He has two children just getting started, 2 and 4 years old. And so welcome to all my panelists. Thanks for coming. I'm going to go back through the original order here and ask, I'm going to start off by just giving a general question to say, would you tell me a little bit about your company, some of the major projects you have going on right now, and anything specific you want to share? Maybe just 3 or 5 minutes. I'm going to start with you, Adeel.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate being on this panel. So a little bit about McCarthy. McCarthy's been around for 156 years now. It's one of the oldest privately held construction companies in the U.S. We are 100% employee owned, and we take a lot of pride in that. We've been building in Houston for almost 40 years now, kind of started back in the early 1980s. Currently, we've got a little over $1 billion worth of ongoing construction projects in Houston. We've got 4 projects right now currently with the Port of Houston in excess of $150 million that we've done. Port of Houston has been our biggest client in Houston. We've done north of $500 million worth of projects with the Port of Houston. Coast to coast, we do about $5 billion worth of work from the West Coast out to the East Coast. We've got 16 offices scattered throughout the U.S. We pride ourselves in safety. That comes number one, first and foremost for us. We are a community-based builder, and what that means for us is being part of the industry, being part of the community that we're working in. In Houston, we're part of an interagency mentor-protege program where we help assist smaller contractors, and we're a mentor to some of those smaller contractors and help assist them in procuring work and general construction practices.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Brandon, I threw out some of the accolades and how you're all involved in that, but one thing I didn't mention when I was looking at your bio, I noticed that you came from the cradle of upper education in the national champion LSU Tigers, so it's not surprising me that you're quite a leader in the field.
Thank you, Thomas. A little bit about performance. We've been in business for 41 years. We were founded in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, still privately owned with one owner. And we've been in the Texas region for about 25 years. We do projects ranging in size from a few $1,000s to $1.5 billion and have projects throughout the Gulf Coast. Primarily, we are a Gulf Coast contractor, although we do leave the Gulf Coast to do projects for long-term established clients in other parts of the country from time to time. Currently, we have major projects going on in the Houston area, and the pipeline has slowed a little bit with the economy and COVID, but we're still looking forward to a good finish to this year and hopefully a good year next year. Performance is very active in our community, particularly in the workforce development space. We've been very active with local high schools throughout the Gulf Coast, sponsoring their programs, helping to audit their NCCR curriculum, providing consumables, and just trying to build that next generation workforce that's so important. So something we're really proud of is our workforce development, both with high schools and with the military. We are the only construction contractor in the United States to have made the Military Times Best for Vets list for the last 4 years. So another thing that we're very excited about. So I appreciate being on today, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brandon. And Dean and Alberto, I'll let you guys kick it back and forth. Tell us a little bit about the port and what's going on over there.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Vince. You did such an enormous job of selling Port of Houston that I don't have much things to say about Port of Houston, and especially Project 11. You know, Port has been there for a long time, and we are here to serve people. You know, we at the port, we have procurement, where we have two kinds of procurement, basically. One is the informal procurement. Anything which is less than 50,000 is considered informal procurement. And, you know, you have to be the registered vendor on in our procurement database. And if you are registered, you get automatically you get a notification whenever we have a solicitation which is under 50,000, and it depends on how you registered the codes and all that. So you get an automatic notification and you can bid on that project. Then we have formal procurements, and anything which is over 50,000 all the way up. There is no limit on the other end, you know. So it goes all the way up to X dollar amount, no limit. Okay. With that system, it works the same way. You know, you have to be registered with us in our procurement database, and you get a notification. If there is a project, we also advertise in the newspaper. And then, you know, you go through an evaluation process. And in the evaluation process, depending on the method which we use, there are different kind of methods which we use, you know, the criteria is different according to the method of procurement we use. So it's the same thing, but the first thing is you have to be registered with us in our database. Then in terms of, I will just add a little bit on Project 11. As Vince mentioned that, you know, these projects take a long time. Port has been working on that project since 2010. And, you know, we have been planning, we have been in, you know, with Congress and the Corps. So finally, it is coming to a point where we are going to start seeing some, you know, development in there, in which people would see also. And the reason for all that is because during all this time since we had been working, we had been thinking to the future. During this time, the growth in the size of vessels has grown up, you know, and so that's why we need the waterways to be widened and deepened so we can accommodate bigger ships and stuff like that, you know. So that is the whole reason for doing this. So it's just excellent for the whole economy, you know, not just for Houston, but overall, as Vince mentioned, for the whole nation also, you know. Alberto, you can add more, you know, stuff. Go ahead, please. You're muted.
Oh, here I. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Vincent and Dean did an excellent job with all the stats and talking about the port. As you all know, the port is an economic engine. We're here to support the economy in the U.S. and foremost for the region. We're pretty much the first port in foreign tonnage and exports, pretty much the second one in total tonnage in the U.S. We have an impact in a lot of jobs, a lot of billions of dollars. And just to give you an idea, the Port of Houston is a 25-mile long complex of 200 terminals, private and public terminals. The port owns, leases, operates, maintains 8 of them. Barber's Cut, Bayport, and Turning Basin being the main ones. We procure everything from $200 POs to multi-million-dollar POs. So we have everything. It's a big span. As Dean explained a little bit, we have formals and informals. We have our manual posted on our website if you're interested in how we actually do business. Regarding Project 11, of course, that's an extremely complex and significant infrastructure project for the region. It involves federal, state, local, and public and private stakeholders. It's really important. I heard a question about funding, and Vincent talked about the web page, the website. That website is thehoustonchipschannel.com. You'll find a lot of valuable information there as well. Dean also talked about registration with the port. We don't previously approve anybody. You're more than welcome to actually register in our system. It's spicy.poha.com. We, of course, support small business and local vendors as well. You can find that, how we prioritize that in our manual as well. And that's about it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jeff, tell us a little bit about Burns and Mac and what you have going on right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Burns McDonnell is an employee-owned engineering and construction EPC firm founded in 1898. We're an E&R top 10 design firm and a top 50 contractor that operates in a variety of markets, including oil, gas, and chemical, power generation, delivery, manufacturing, aviation, and transportation. We have a national presence with a heavy emphasis on the Gulf Coast. In fact, our largest regional office is our Houston location, which employs approximately 700 engineering and construction professionals. Current major projects include the construction of a power generation facility in New Orleans, a major power delivery project in Port Arthur, Texas, multiple oil and gas projects in the Mont Belvieu area, and several projects associated with the Houston airport system. Burns McDonnell is committed to serving the communities in which it operates, and this includes active local and diverse supplier outreach, as well as support of Houston STEM education initiatives.
Thank you. Appreciate the quick introduction. And Diego, tell us about Clough and what you're doing here in the U.S. and internationally.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Big Alliance, and also the Economic Alliance. And it was a really informative presentation from Vince. And it's a pleasure for me to be part of this panel. Clough is a 100-year-old engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning company that was founded in Perth in Western Australia. And we are relatively new to the North American market. As you mentioned, we entered the market in 2014, and we've been growing in this market. And now we have pretty much 300 professionals between the US and Canada. And we have landed recently on the back-end acquisition, a major engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning project in the Gulf Coast. And so that's a petrochemical refining type of project. We also have some nearshore marine project in British Columbia, which is ongoing. And because we're new to the market, we're really looking for partners as part of our supply chain. And this is a great opportunity for us to get more exposure and get to know better this market.
Thank you. I'm going to throw out a question generally to all the panelists, and you can jump in. Let's try not to talk over each other. It's a little more difficult on Zoom than it is in person. But with all the effects of COVID-19 shutting the economy down, the demand destruction, and has forced a lot of greenfield and brownfield projects to be pushed back, obviously, what do you see on the EPC side and your project level for the rest of this year and next year? And what do you think really the short-term and long-term outlook is for the downstream refining and petrochemical business and their spend generally?
So I guess I'll kick it off. We've kind of seen some of the projects slip to the right a little bit. You know, it's not necessarily too much different from the from 2014, 2015 when oil dropped. What generally happened, there were a bunch of projects that were designed and getting ready to be kicked off, and those projects got shelved. We're kind of basically seeing the same thing right now. On the EPC side and on the midstream side, that there's a few projects that are kind of shifting to the right. The projects aren't being canceled, and that's just one of the things we just want to make sure that we're clear on. That the projects aren't getting canceled; they're just shifting off to the right. So where something may have originally started in Q2 or Q3 of 20, they're probably going to be looking to start up Q4 of 20 or potentially Q1, Q2 of 21.
So we're actually seeing even some further shifts to the right. We're seeing some projects being pushed back all the way to 2022. I think as an industry, CapEx spend is going to contract probably fairly severely over the next 18 months before we see an expansion. And so you're going to see more of that OPEX budget being used because the plants will have to be maintained. But I think you're going to see a lot less CapEx as we go forward the rest of this year.
Brandon, when you say substantial, you know, I'm not going to hold you this number, obviously, and it's a wild guess, but, you know, what do you think, what range of percentage do you think CapEx is going to go down next year?
It's, you know, it's hard to put a range on it, Thomas, but it seems significant is the best way I could say it. I mean, it's still early. We still don't know, you know, as we come out of this COVID thing, and hopefully we are coming out of it and people start to get reemployed, if that's going to be the kickstart we need. You know, some people from the Fed are saying they predict 10 years to get back to the employment levels we were at 3 months ago. I really hope that's not the case, but that could have a lasting effect on product demand. But this is definitely being more driven by product demand and the global economy, even more so than COVID. COVID was kind of a catalyst to kill the economy, but it's the economy that's killing CapEx. So I think it's going to be a fairly long recovery, and I think you're going to see a different industry 18 months from now. I think we're going to have to be leaner. We're going to have to be you know, more productive at what we're doing to drive costs down, because we are going to be competing on a global scale more than we ever have, and we're going to see projects that were slam dunks for the U.S. Gulf Coast going to China, going to the Middle East as our competitive advantage continues to erode if we don't up our productivity. And so I think it's also important that we don't lose sight of developing our workforce here, because when we do come out on the other end, if we don't have the workforce, then we're not going to have that competitive advantage that we've kind of been so blessed with over the last 7 to 8 years in the petrochem world.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with Brandon, and we see the projects being deferred, so not just to 2021 but beyond, and frankly some cancellations as well. It's not all deferrals. So I think the recovery is going to take some time. And I guess to answer your question regarding CapEx declines, if you look at publicly reported data across the market, you could see companies reporting anywhere from on the high, or I guess it'd be low end 20 to all the way up to 70% declines in their planned CapEx for the next year and a half.
I didn't want to say it, Jeff, but I'm glad you did.
Well, it's a wide range, and I think it's a fair answer in that, you know, we all try to make business plans based on assumptions, right? But it's hard to make assumptions in this current environment when you really don't know what's going to happen 2 or 3 months from now. It's just really difficult. Diego, did you have anything you wanted to add or no?
Yeah, and I think I share the sentiment of the other panelists. I think the big uncertainty is really if we're going to have another outbreak of COVID, if that's really could affect in some way some of the fundamentals, also in terms of demands that are going to affect really some of these projects to reach new project to reach FID, or some of the existing project to restart. What we are experiencing on our project is that our projects are moving forward and not getting canceled and just pushing a little bit to the right.
Mm-hmm. So there's a consensus here that, yeah, things are getting pushed to the right. CapEx is going to go down, at least in the near term. Brandon mentioned maybe doing more work under the OPEX. What are you seeing, those of you who work in the maintenance space, are you seeing companies trying to compensate there? Are those budgets going to be flat or even hopefully increase a little bit because they're going to be doing many more smaller projects, maybe catching up on some housekeeping that they weren't working on before?
Thomas, unfortunately, I think it's still too early to tell. I mean, I think we're still shuffling the cards from this COVID thing. And another thing is, it's as everyone knows, you know, every 4 years for a presidential election cycle, it kind of tanks the CapEx and OPEX budget for a little bit anyway, just from the uncertainty. You know, we've been in a really nice regulatory environment for the last 3 years, and that's really up in the air right now after whatever's going to happen in November, what that regulatory environment looks like. So you may see an increase in OPEX if the current administration is gone from the White House just because of stricter regulation. And so you may see some air quality and EPA type ruling that's going to drive OPEX spend. On the flip side of that, you may see some more, if the current administration stays in office, you may see some more debottleneck and streamlining and improving processes type OPEX spend. So I think it's still too early to tell what's going to come out on this.
Fair enough. Now, I don't get out inside of the plants a whole lot. If I were to take a job walk on one of your construction sites right now, how would that experience be different from the pre-COVID environment? You know, how's this affected your day-to-day procedures in the field? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could start a little bit with regards to some of the measures and practices, protocols that we've had since COVID. You know, employee screening has been huge for us. You know, we're requiring and checking temperature on all of our folks. We've got designated entry and exit points for our project sites to make sure that we're controlling the flow of people coming in and out of the site. You know, in addition to that, we're checking the temperature. We're making sure that that everyone's kind of gone through a screening process. Have you guys been involved or been close to anyone in the last 14 days? You know, there's just a slew of questions that's being asked, you know, of the folks that are coming on site, whether they're our craft employees, whether it's our staff, or whether it's just visitors that are coming to the job site. We're trying to curtail the visitors as much as possible, so to try to limit the exposure, the social distancing, the PPE, cleaning of equipment. We've got a lot of small tools that are used on the projects that are typically used by multiple craft folks. So being diligent about cleaning those tools after they're being used. We've got protocols set in place to make sure that that's happening. So those are the kinds of things that you know, we're doing and we're seeing to try to keep everyone safe, you know, not just our craft folks, but the folks that are coming to the job site or that are interacting with our folks on a daily basis.
And we have
At the port as well.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dean.
Oh.
At the port as well, we're implementing lots of measures as well. We have purchased a lot of PPE, thermal cameras. We have special entrances for, depending on the type of work that you do, ILA workers, Port of Houston employees. The people at the executive office mostly are telecommuting. The people at the terminals are actually there. As our executive director says, no matter what happens, we have to keep running to keep the supply chain moving, keep commerce flowing, and keep supporting a region. And I do thank the people on the front lines risking getting the virus, the men and women there. But we're business as usual. We stopped at Barber's Cut and Bayport for 2 days just for the first decontamination procedures. After that, we are doing disinfectant protocols every week. and we're just there working and supporting the region.
And some of our projects, McCarthy is working some of our projects, so the projects are going as normal, with the special, all the precautions Adeel mentioned. So they're all working, they're all doing their work. So it did not stop, except for, as Alberto mentioned, those 2 days, when we did the deep cleaning and all that, So thank you.
And I think you'd also you'd see some new stuff. You'd see staggered lunches. You'd see social distancing, even in the racks, even in places that you wouldn't expect to see it. The temperature checks for sure, but it would definitely look different today than if you were on a site 4 or 5 months ago. I think the most striking is the staggered lunches, going from these lunch tents with 600, 700, 800 people to breaking that out so that you can space everybody out and staggering those lunches. And you'd probably see the cleanest porta cans you've ever seen on a job site also.
Yeah, I think another striking thing, at least to me on our job sites, whenever I go and I see a socially distanced morning tailboard happening, it's really hits me that things do look a little bit different on our job sites right now.
Mm-hmm. But as really, we are at the core an EPC construction company. So basically what we do on the day-to-day, we manage risk and we manage changing condition. And we have implemented all the measures that the other panelists have been raising, but also what we are really looking at is completely our construction execution sequence, because we are taking now into consideration workforce density. So how many people can work in the same space? And is really forcing us to rethink a little bit how we're going to execute the job in its entirety. So it's definitely something to take into consideration now as we develop our plans.
Well, all of you still got, excuse me, all of you still have projects ongoing at the moment, and you are making acquisitions of products and services, including this additional PPE and other items. For the suppliers and subcontractors in our audience that are looking to provide products and services to your EPC companies, could you give us a little insight? I think that the port did a nice job talking about how to get qualified to do business with their entity, but with your EPC contractor companies, how does somebody best approach your business to succeed in earning approval to do business with you? And can you tell us a little bit about some of your biggest areas of spend and maybe which products and services you think are the hardest to source properly? I'll start in order and ask Malik to answer.
We do have a formal pre-qualification process. There's an online website that we usually direct our subcontractors and vendors to. We do update that on a yearly basis, even with the vendors and subcontractors that have been pre-qualified in the past. Some of the metrics that we're focusing on or that we're tracking, there's financial. A real important one for us is safety. We're checking to see what the safety metrics are of our trade partners and some of the vendors we're working with. In some of the industrial facilities we're in, that's hugely paramount. And so we want to make sure that some of the subs that we're being brought in can meet up and live up to the expectations of ourselves as well as our clients that we work for. So we do have a pretty rigorous pre-qualification process. Once on board, it's pretty straightforward from there, and there's a general expectation not only of what we're looking for, but as well what our clients are looking for.
Thanks. Anybody else want to help in? Brandon, how about you?
For us, we've moved to a strategic sourcing model, and so we've got a strategic sourcing manager. And so the best way to get in front of him is to go to www.performance-contractors.com and click contact us, and then click on partner with us and start the MSA process, whether for vendors or subcontractors. And then from there, reach out to someone like me or one of our estimators or project managers. But without that MSA process, it's hard for us to get started. So that's definitely the first step. From a need standpoint, we're always looking for good vendors and subcontractors in every aspect of industrial construction. So whether it's bulk materials or safety supplies, or, we typically subcontract E&I, scaffold, paint, insulation, and then some more specialty crafts like refractory work and asphalt paving, and maybe heavy civil bathtubing and things of that nature. So that's the type of subcontractors we'd be looking for.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that. Jeff?
Yeah, I think that in terms of areas of most spend on the procurement side of things, I mean, clearly mechanically engineered equipment, static or rotating pumps, heaters, boilers, those are huge areas of spend for us. Utility structures are large areas of spend for us. That would be on the goods side. On the labor side, probably I'd say specialty craft would be the area that we're most active in trying to engage new partners, new vendors, but really subcontract labor of all types. To engage Burns McDonnell, the first step, we do have an online registration process that you can get to from the www.burnsmcd.com. But really, that's just the first step in the process. What I like to tell people is that's going through that registration process and being registered in the system is what would essentially enable a project manager or a supplier quality manager to issue you a PO. But really, in order to gain opportunities with Burns McDonnell, you need to reach out to supplier quality management, project management to be afforded those opportunities to bid. And probably the best way to make those connections is through somebody like me or through our supplier quality leadership. I point you in the right direction to become aware of opportunities to be able to present your capabilities to Burns McDonnell so that we can potentially utilize you. What are we looking for in a subcontractor? Particular safety performance is number one. Predictability of outcome would be number two. So those are the two things that we're primarily focused on when we're vetting our potential subcontractors and suppliers as well. And I think the last thing you asked is would COVID-19 impact availability of suppliers? And to that, I would say no, probably not, or we haven't seen that, but we do have increased concerns on our ability or the ability of our suppliers to deliver on their commitments. With this, there's a volatile market, there's employment changes, there's a lot going on. So really for us, it's partnering with our suppliers to make sure that those outcomes that we're looking for are predictable and as expected.
Thank you, Jeff. And Diego.
Yeah, for us, we have an integrated supply chain system which is available online to pre-qualify our supplier and our subcontractor. And what we really assess, we assess the initial stage for the pre-qualification, the financials, definitely the quality side, but historically also the safety performance. And now it's quite interesting. We also look at really the response and the plans that the suppliers have put in place to mitigate the risks associated with COVID-19. So we also look at the health, the H side, in HSSC, the health side, as part of our supplier review. We're new to the Gulf Coast, so we're always looking for new partners. At the moment, we're really active in procurement activities, but encourage everyone who wants to get in touch with us. We have an email address, which is supplychain@cloughgroup.com. That's where people can reach out and we can start the process.
Well, thank you, Diego. I didn't want to skip the report. Dean and Alberto, if you had anything additional you wanted to add about your procurement process?
Well, since we are a governmental agency, we have some laws where we follow the water code in terms of our procurement. So what we, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be registered with us. First of all, we don't have any pre-qualified vendor list. It's open to anybody who can supply and who goes through the criteria. So if you meet the criteria and, depending on the procurement, you get the project or the supply, whatever it is. So basically two kinds of procurement: informal, which is less than 50,000, open to anybody who is registered, come into our system, register their firm, and then they get an opportunity to bid on that. Similarly, any formal projects which are over 50,000 and need the commission approval have to be, registered, same process, but of course the criteria is a little bit more stringent, and, depending on the type of method used, so the criteria changes. Of course, price is always price, delivery, safety, those are part of our criteria, so go through an evaluation process, then it goes through, the recommendation is goes through our commission for approval, and then if you are, then you get that project or that contract. So it's open to anyone. It's not, if you're a legit business, you can register with the port and be part of the whole thing, it's open. I don't know if Alberto want to add something else on that. Mike.
You're muted, Alberto.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. For the informals, which are 50 and lower, they're not regulated by the water code, and most of them are materials. Our primary variables that we use to choose is basically price, lead time, proximity as well. Sometimes we don't want to have everything on site. We want you to be within the area. So if we need it, maybe we can get it in one day or two. Also, small business and being local as well gets for small business, we have a 10% benefit. For local, it's 3%. So based on those quotes, we can choose as well accordingly.
Are you there?
I want to absolutely thank all of our panelists. I'm going to send it out to the audience for questions now, and I think Chad, you're moderating that that question and answer board for me.
Yeah,
would you like
Thomas,
to pick out a couple of questions for our panel, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of really good questions. Let me start with the two port panelists since we just finished with them. So this is a question about kind of product movements from Manish Mishara. Does the custom clearance and products moving out of the port take more time than usual, I guess now because of COVID-19? What levels, and are you still imposing quarantine on any cargo and crew coming from outside of the U.S., let's say Asia or Europe? And I know that's probably not exactly in your bailiwick, but I suspect y'all can probably comment a little bit, maybe Dean or Alberto, on movement of products, quarantining products, and people coming off of those ships as they come into the Port of Houston.
Well, I did speak with the chief of security, PSEO at the port, and he did mention that basically from vessels coming in, say a vessel from China takes about 21 days to actually get to the port. So in that time frame, we would know if somebody's infected or not. It is the Coast Guard's responsibility to actually mitigate that risk as well. If there's somebody with the virus, they'll take action, and that basically relies on them. As far as customs, I really don't have any of that information. I don't know if you do, Dean, but I would refer you to Lisa Ashley. She's basically the communications guru at the port, and I can provide that email and contact information if you want it. You can email me at afoster@porthouston.com.
Yeah, we can get back, because I'll be honest, as Alberto said, I'm not aware of if anything has happened in terms of the movement, So you can
Well,
send, yeah, a question and we will answer that.
No, I appreciate that. I knew that was not right in your wheelhouse, but wanted to toss that out there. You know, most people in the region know that early on in the pandemic, there was a case of COVID-19 with one of the workers on at one of our port container locations that actually shut the port down for a day. But just the efficiency and the protocols that were instituted and the way that Roger Gunther and all of the operations guys got the port back up and running within the next 24 hours was really impressive and obviously greatly needed. We could never close that port down for any length of time. Those container terminals. So they did a great job, and all the folks at the Port of Houston did a great job of getting that back up and running very, very quickly. Believe me, there were phone calls from not just Austin, but Washington, D.C. to see how quickly we could get the port back up and running. And they did a fantastic job kind of moving through that process, keeping their employees safe, reopening that facility. So good job there for the port. So here's Thomas, here's another good question for really all of our panelists. So what about the impact of all of this on our U.S. Gulf Coast labor costs and the overall tick of the downstream projects? I know y'all touched a little bit on this, but what do you think the impact will be? And then the ballpark percentages, kind of a best guess on labor costs, basically, or overall costs of projects as we move forward. I guess we could toss that out to anybody who's willing to take a stab at that.
So Chad, you know, normally when I'm on a panel, this is the kind of questions I'm getting asked about labor and workforce. So kind of in my wheelhouse here. If you look at construction labor going back to Hurricane Katrina in the industrial market, labor prices have not gone down once since 2005. In the Great Recession in 2008, they stagnated, and then they began to climb again when oil, well, we thought oil went to hell in 2014, and then COVID came and really showed us what could happen. But in 2014, prices stagnated, and then they started to climb again, but we've never had a decline. I think with the massive upheaval we've had in the economy, you may see a decline in the short term. Say over the next 12 to 18 months, you may see, you know, anywhere from 50 cents to a couple dollars an hour on your journey level craft. And I think maybe some more on the unskilled, the helpers and laborers and fire watches and hole watches of the world. As far as TIC, anytime you see such a contraction in CapEx, TIC is going to go down. And so for those companies that have money and aren't relying on finances and have projects kind of in the pipe ready to roll, they could probably save a lot of money if they can do it very near term. Because historically, we've definitely seen TIC drop when CapEx has gone down, just because everybody gets hungry, everybody sharpens their pencil, labor is a little more available. So I think you'll see probably a decrease in both of those, at least for the next 12 to 18 months.
Very good. Very good. All right. I don't see anybody else jumping in. I'm gonna go ahead. Go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, I would add that definitely in the short terms, we see something similar to what Brandon was mentioning. So a little bit of a softer market. So a little bit an advantage for us. But what we see is then when the economy kick back in and things go back to normal, we're going to have a little bit an increase in the labor price, because all the projects are going to start at the same time, and we start at the same time. So yeah, we see an opportunity, but we also see probably in a little bit longer term a risk of an increase.
Very good. Very good. All right. Next question, and kind of a follow-up on that. In what way do you see the EPC current existing model changing? And Brandon, you touched a little bit on this. And in what direction? You know, basically, does lump sum, will that still work, or is there another model coming that everybody needs to look for here in the future?
You know, historically, in times like this, lump sum becomes the model. If you've got the time to engineer it, and times are, you know, things are tight and there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, we typically see more lump sum. So I think you may see more of that. you'll see probably a little less fast track. And what drives T&M a lot of times is that projects get fast tracked and you need to get into the field before you can finish the engineering. And so no contractor in their right mind would take the risk. But if you've got time to engineer because you're slow playing your CapEx spend, then you can get out more complete projects that contractors will take the risk on. So I would expect to see more lump sum, at least in the near term.
I'd say the only maybe contrarian statement I'd say to that, there have been a lot of major EPCs that have been burned recently on lump sum work, and so I think particularly on the large projects, you're going to see less EPCs willing to bite off projects lump sum. I'm talking for major projects more so than your smaller mid-sized projects. And we're seeing, say speaking for Burns McDonnell, it's the lump sum is still a model that we employ, but we're also doing a lot of whether it be some sort of a guaranteed max price model, target price, lots of other variations, contract structures that are maybe better fits for a particular project. So I do think that there is probably some change afoot in that, and again, particularly on the major project scene.
Yeah, I'd agree with that on the major projects for sure. The only, I guess, caveat to that is those owners that do EP with a split C, where they may be able to get their EP reimbursable, get a good package, and get a split C to go in lump sum. But yeah, on the megas, you're 100% right.
Very good. Any other?
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with both and Brandon on that. One of the things that we're starting to see a little bit more of is the progressive design build. And especially when you're getting into some of those large projects. I think just given that there have been a few folks that are getting burnt by it, I think protocol is getting established where there's some off ramps, if you will, that will allow for either the contractor, the owner, or the owner to make sure that they're able to execute, and if they can't, what does that look like? And before you get to a position where you're filing for Chapter 11. So I think on the large projects, you are starting to see some alternative deliveries outside of the traditional lump sum that are coming into play.
Very good. Very good. Thomas, here's a question for Diego from Chris Ramos. Basically, Diego, welcome to Texas. We're excited to see Clough making an impact in the States, and congratulations on the project in Pasadena. We obviously have seen a lot of foreign investment in the Gulf. Do you think that this will taper off due to the pandemic and low oil prices? Seeing that Clough has its roots outside the U.S., does it change your view on bidding and investing efforts here in the Gulf Coast?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chris Ramos. For us, we saw the U.S. and the Gulf Coast specifically as a strategic market. That's why we decided to invest. And our view hasn't changed. It's a long-term investment. We're here to stay. All our team is made of U.S. personnel. Only a bunch of us have come over from Australia, but the rest is really all U.S. personnel. They understand how to execute projects here in the U.S. region. And so definitely from our perspective, we see a really strong market here, and we think it's going to be as big as our market back in other part of the world. Clough is a leader in Australia, and it wants to become a leader in North America. And definitely all the management team here is completely independent from the management team back in Australia. So we can make our own decision, and we have full autonomy to grow here in the region.
Very good. Any other kind of structural changes from some of our companies on kind of Gulf Coast investment? I mean, I still think we're positioned to be one of the global leaders as far as this industry is concerned. Okay. So this for our port panelists again. We've seen continued year-over-year increase in container traffic. Can y'all talk a little bit about some of the recent projects on the 2 container terminals. I know Barber's Cut has gone through kind of a good expansion and facelift. What are the future plans for additional CAP projects at Bayport specifically?
You got me there. We do have, I know that our project, do you know any projects which are in line, Alberto?
Not off the top of my mind, but we have been doing lots of rehabs at the wharves, both Bayport and Barber's Cut.
Yeah, I could probably add some commentary here because we've.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So, so specific towards Bayport Terminal, I know that there is a planned expansion for Wharf 6, future Wharf 6, that's expected later in this year. Container Yard 2 South was bid about a month ago, and that's about roughly 20 acres of container yard space. In addition to that, there'll be Container Yard 1 just east of that. That'll probably be coming out, I would imagine, early 21. That's about 50 acres of container yard space. And along with that, there are some upgrades on Port Road itself to facilitate, the influx of trucking that's going on with all this additional wharf space, container yard space that's being built specific towards Bayport Terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And right there at the Port Road, we are at Bayport. We are also expanding and we are doing the land development there for future use. So that project is on, is being evaluated right now. I know that we are also, in order to, for the Project 11, in order to have bigger ships come in, we have projects on board already for expansion of our wharves and putting bigger and larger cranes to handle those larger ships. So those projects are also in there, already being, in the works. So that's what we have. But if you go to our website, I believe there is a list of the future projects coming up,
Very good.
Specifically where they are. Which terminal they are.
Very good. Well, I wanted y'all to touch a little bit on all of the activity at Bayport. Our transportation committee has a specific subcommittee just for Port Road as far as the expansion project that goes there, and then all of the associated companies that work along Port Road there, starting with LBC out by out by 146 and moving all the way down the road there. That committee identified, as we speak right now here in June of 2020, there are 14 specific either expansion or construction projects that are happening within a stone's throw, either connected to Port Road or you could literally throw a rock and hit it. So there's a lot of activity on the petrochemical side, on the midstream logistics, kind of moving product out of LBC and Odgeveld, as well as the port expanding the road in the middle of all of those other industrial expansion projects. And then, oh, by the way, TxDOT is expanding 146 down at the end of the road there, through Seabrook. So a lot of things going on right there. A lot of good activity and a lot of very large CAP projects that are kind of in the middle of construction as we speak right now. Well, with that, Thomas, we are out of time. I will throw it back to Thomas real quickly for any final comments from you, and then I'll wrap it up as we thank all our panelists here.
I just really wanted to thank the panelists. Great discussion today. How things have changed in 1 year since we had this event last time around. But we do live in a cyclical business environment. Maybe this black swan brought on a quicker, harder change than we would like, but I do believe strongly that Houston is well positioned overall to be globally competitive, and certainly the energy industry is not going away. So we need leadership of men like yourselves and women in the workforce as well to help take us into the next chapter of what we have for the United States. So everybody stay safe, and thank you for your participation.
Very good. Thank you, Thomas. On behalf of the Economic Alliance, I do want to thank our keynote speaker, Vincent DiCosimo, Thomas Brinsko, our moderator, and all of our panelists for their time and insight. I'd also like to thank our Business Growth Committee here at the Economic Alliance that helps make this happen. And of course, our sponsor, ABGI, who made this event possible today. Thank you again for joining us. Everybody have a safe and great day. And with that, we will sign off. Thank you very much.